Shayne, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, of course. How could I miss it?
Anyway, so a year ago, did you think that Polymarket would be where it is today?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, right when we launched Polymarket very early on, it was clear two things. One was that the idea of markets being an information source was like very palatable for a mass market audience. The idea that you could see a probability about a current event and be like, okay, this is how it's changing. That was something that, you know, there were potentially billions of people who could understand it intuitively. And on the other hand, the idea that there could be markets on things that there otherwise were not markets on, and that there was, you know, utility to participating in it, either whether it's interesting to be able to trade on something that you have an opinion on, or you're hedging risk, et cetera. So I really wouldn't have stuck with it for a while if I didn't very tangibly see that it could be a cultural phenomenon. So, you know, luckily we were able to get a really good understanding of the politics market, which I would say is unsaturated, and we had a 10x better product effectively in terms of following the election, as well as the best place to trade it. And we had the right market structure. And you know, we went all in on it with the goal of basically seeing what there is today. So it's exciting that it's materialized, but it's still early.
So you guys have just crushed it on the US presidential election. I think 1.9 billion bet in just that presidential election market alone. That's not even the state markets, that's not the popular vote. So one day after the election, like on November 6th,
yeah,
what's happening on Polymarket? Like what's the next big, what
totally
keeps growth going?
So,
yeah.
You know, what I'll say is like, I don't really know much about politics. I'm not too passionate about politics. I grew up in New York with two ultra liberal parents who are both teachers. And I was always kind of just apolitical. But, you know, when you think about the popularity of polling and the idea that prediction markets are just like genuinely an order of magnitude improvement, you know, it was a great go-to-market, as a lot of the iconic entrepreneurs would say. You have to find your beachhead, or you have to find your New York City, is how I was taught it, where you find that first vertical. And that was what it is. That was really what worked for us with Polymarket. But what I've seen is like the birth of a new information format, where there's quite literally on, you know, Twitter, X, like Polymarket is now one of the most trending topics on all of the site, like on a recurring basis. And a lot of it is like discourse around markets as an information source being accurate. And what we've noticed is like people are also looking at all other types of markets at the same time. Still, it's early. It doesn't have the critical mass that it does with politics as a means of going and just being in the know and understanding what's likely to happen. The idea of a probability and how it changes over time is like just very, very intuitive. So the vision for what we're trying to do, and sort of the strategy of piece by piece going and building like a markets ecosystem from the ground up, is to let anyone create and trade markets on anything. So that any headline, any risk, any potential hedge, any structured product could be gone and created in a really, really easy way. If you take it back to like what are blockchains, the best use case is the ability to create a free market, a globally accessible, transparent, free market, basically for free within a few minutes. And that had never been productized, and that's basically what we've done. And the thinking was always, if you can't get it right with 20 markets, and then you can't get it right with 200 markets, then you definitely can't get it right with 20,000. So what we've built is we went really deep on marketplace dynamics, on distribution strategies, to go and create a market for events and basically like any question that you could ask from scratch. And I think that, you know, there's a handful of verticals that we can get into, and I'll circle back on that in a second. But when I think about the future of Polymarket, it really deeply is people creating their own markets for everything, and people basically competing to create the market about the current event, and competing on distribution. And when people go and trade the markets, they get a cut of the fees. So sort of a marketplace of markets. That is very deeply what I think we're building. And you know, you've got the benefit of it being this information source that grows like viral media, which we've seen. And on the counterpart, like this idea, I'll meet with people from hedge funds and they're like, okay, like you're doing billions of dollars, or, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars. And like, wait until any macro trade I make, I can go create a market that like isolates risk and I can go and create a hedge. And like I would go and put $100 million on that or something as part of these like $10+ billion AUM hedge funds. So there's all these elements, and I think what Polymarket has really done is it's enabled there to be price discovery and liquidity for things that before never had it. If you think about trading and betting, like trading, every asset already has liquidity. It's disparate, but like there's price discovery and liquidity for everything. So if you build a new front end, you're basically just, the liquidity is not proprietary. And it's very easy to source. And you have payment for order flow, et cetera. And then for betting, it's like, it's all based on these odds feeds and these B2B providers and white label providers. And if you are running, a front end for that, you can't really veer outside of what is offered on the odds feeds because you're not an odds maker. You're not taking risk. You're not a marketplace. You're just showing the odds feeds and taking a 10% fig. So with Polymarket, what we wanted to focus on was like, hey, people were pricing markets. People were taking both sides of events like in ancient Rome, in gladiatorial matches, right? So like, how can you bring that to the internet where any event or any market, someone can go and be like, well, I think it's probably like 60% likely, so I'll be bid 55, ask 65. We built the tools around that, and what we figured out is like, hey, for all these arbitrary markets, you can get price discovery and you can get liquidity. And once you have price discovery and liquidity, then you can serve demand. Once you have demand and people come in and make market orders, liquidity scales. That's the flow, what I call like the financial laws of physics. And that was what we really leaned into hard. So what's exciting about that is if you can go and bootstrap liquidity and price in new verticals, you can go and build new consumer experiences around them, and you can go run new go-to-markets around them in unsaturated verticals. Unlike sports, where it's like everyone's competing for the same eyeballs and it's just like a race to the bottom. When we entered politics, it was like all the distribution channels for politics were like unsaturated. I mean, people were basically not making any money, the people with the largest audiences. So that was something that we went for. But when we think about like other verticals, it's like every live stream, there should be markets on that, right? And like the idea of having an odds feed for that is basically impossible for everything. But the idea of letting people go and create markets and basically market make and have 10-cent wide spreads, all of a sudden now you can have a market and you can build a consumer experience and run a go-to-market around it. And I think that's super exciting and like is open ocean. And if you compound that with this idea that people can do it themselves and make money that way, you've got this really disruptive model. So the idea that it's for politics is like awesome for now, but if we have our way, it'll be sort of like a footnote in the longer story.
Can I ask you just a like micro market question? So related to like the fidelity and accuracy of the price discovery on Polymarket, I think one question that's been raised is, do you think that the Polymarket odds reflect the bias of crypto native users? So they're skewed maybe a certain direction. And then the second question is, I think there was some talk around particularly the presidential election market, which was recently skewed by like a couple large single wallets that were bidding on Trump. I'm curious, how accurate do you see the odds, and are there certain biases or structural issues that may cause the odds to diverge from true probability?
Right. When you say skewed, what do you mean?
Well, I guess like I kind of think about like any event has like the true odds, and no one knows what the true odds actually are. Right? They're kind of unknown. And then there are the odds that you see on Polymarket, which is the marginal price at which buyers and sellers transact. Yeah. And so like the delta between those two things, that divergence, I kind of consider some sort of bias that could be inherent on the platform.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it is really invaluable information if there's a ton of bid pressure on Trump and people buy a lot, and then then there's $50 to $100 million traded after that, and the prices get moved back down. That in and of itself is like invaluable. And people say, oh, well, it's priced too high, right? But like everyone who traded after didn't think it was priced too high. If they did, they would have bid Kamala up back to where she was. So, the markets are really, from my point of view, like the most liquid prediction market about something is the best way to discern what the truth is, because there's really no other alternative. The other alternative is one person's opinion versus another person's opinion. And that doesn't mean at every given moment that it's some sort of all-knowing algorithm. It means that you can look at the market price and these things are only going to get bigger over time and they're going to have more and more participants. And effectively it's coming to consensus in that moment on what the probability is. Of course, people can go and say this and that and like it skewed up, but it's gone up more since then. And so has every other forecast or sports book or other venue. So the thing that you can trust in that scenario is what's the one that's most liquid with the most diverse market participants. And it's like, there is a lot of smart money on Polymarket. The price is not dictated by random people coming in and trading. That's like the flow. The market flow is coming in and making it worthwhile for people to post orders. It's the smart money that really is going and sitting there all day with like open orders and pricing. And when those people think there's edge, they bite. And it says a lot that the price went up and people didn't bite. And instead it went even further up. So like that is a nugget of valuable information that like no one can really dispute. And when you think about manipulating a market, people say with like stocks, the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. And it's tricky with stocks because there's really no rhythm or rhyme to the pricing in general. It's an amalgamation of a ton of different metrics and there's no expiry. So if you're levered up, yeah, it could, even if it's a great company, it could go down a lot and you could get wiped out. Whereas with prediction markets on Polymarket, there's no leverage and it's very clear what it will resolve to. You're either going to be right or wrong and you're going to have $1 per share if you are right and you're going to have nothing if you're wrong. And what that enables is like, hey, no matter what the price fluctuates, right, like you're not going to get wiped out if you think that it's trading too low or trading too high or someone's trying to buy it not at market price. That's an opportunity for you to go and put up or shut up. So that's how we think about it. And the two questions you asked basically go hand in hand, but it's like they're fundamental traits of a free market. And people will come and oftentimes like dispute its accuracy and they will 10 times out of 10 be completely misinterpreting what Polymarket is and how odds work and how probability works and how markets work. So, we know that we built what is like the most liquid, most participated in global free market for this. And, just the fact that exists is like invaluable to anyone who wants to know what's going to happen.
So can we double click into like the growth catalysts that you see over the next, let's say, 12 to 24 months, like whether it's on the product, the UX, partnerships, you talked a little bit about create your own market, maybe other end markets like sports betting. Like what are the things that you think kind of 10x Polymarket's current volumes?
Yeah. It's interesting because like I see the traffic here. Like Polymarket has become a very, very high trafficked website. Like more than half of Coinbase last month.
So how many visitors is that?
Theirs was like 28 million and ours was 16 million. But with that said, like, we take a lot of compliance measures and like, trading's not available in the US and like the amount of people who trade compared to the amount of people who could trade is like very small. So despite having tens of millions of people who are aware of it, like there's still a lot of latent demand of people who could be participating, betting their beliefs. For us, it was always about building the right product. Up until very recently, we always were very scrappy and like never had a lot of money to throw around. And like, this, like it was always a frugal, scrappy environment for almost the entirety of the company. But, there is times to be aggressive. But, the important thing is you go and you validate that there's demand and that there is a marketplace there and that there's supply and you can get things working in a sustainable way. So when I think about like the future 10x things, which is like when you're trying to grow fast, it's like really the only thing you should think about. You mentioned sports and like that's like the obvious no-brainer vertical because it's $100+ billion market and it's like ripe for disruption. To take a step back, like we've done approaching $2 billion this year, and that's actually if it's discounting long tail markets in multi-outcome things. So what you were saying about the election, we internally count it as a little less. But like that is not that much, right? Like in global financial market, there's quadrillions traded in derivatives. So the idea of being able to create your own derivative market hypothetically can make, can blossom into something where a day of volume is more than what we've done this year. And when you look at the number of traders, where it's like 100,000, you could potentially see there being tens of millions of people participating. So you've got lowering friction and reaching a larger audience. And we've proven that we're effective when it comes to go-to-market distribution, because hopefully people have seen it around. And on the flip side, it's like if you can go and let people create their own markets, that's really big. There's obviously a ton of verticals, like you mentioned, with sport trading, and we think there's a big opportunity there, and that it's just this like ripe for disruption market, and it could be a good beachhead that's sustainable. When it comes to live streams, like one of the cool things about where we're at is like I constantly find myself meeting people who I look up to or who I know of, and they're like, "Yo, I love Polymarket. Like I'm a huge fan. I check it all the time." So there's a lot of opportunities when it comes to partnering with people or doing deals. And this idea that if you're looking on the internet, whether you're on Reddit or X and there's rumors and trending topics, whether you're on a live stream and there's competitions or things going on, like markets should be integrated into all of that, whether it's just like fun trading on who's likely to win or whether it's looking at the odds. And I think in terms of ubiquity, what we see as today is like more so just, I wouldn't say tip of the iceberg, because like when you're one of the trending things on X, it's like kind of one of the biggest things you can do, but a glimmer into what it could be like universally for all pieces of content.
So maybe switching gears for just a second, I was actually thinking earlier, we did lessons learned over the years, and like one of the big lessons learned was founder tenacity trumps all else. And I was reflecting back on when we met. I think it was in 2020 when we first invested, and you were like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like loved this idea, and you've been through so much, and you've had to overcome a lot to get to where you are. I think many people in your going through what you went through, I mean, at least 9 out of 10 would have thrown in the towel. I'm curious, like just as you reflect on the journey, like what your biggest lessons learned are. I mean, you're here now. I mean, like what, like you very easily could not have been, and I've just been following your path. Like what is as you reflect on that, like what are your biggest takeaways on business building and?
Yeah, first of all, thank you. I mean, I love what I do. I'm really passionate about what I do. I'm very driven by like intellectual stimulation and following my curiosity. And I don't really think I would be effective at being CEO of a B2B SaaS startup, right? Like, unless it was something I was really passionate about, but like, that's something like that, like, I would rather just make music all day, And like, I happen to be probably the most passionate person about prediction markets, information markets. And I think, luckily enough, in the early days when we first met, I truly had less than $50,000, like company, me, and we'd already built the product that was like one of the best in the space at the time. So it was always product first, even when there was no money. And I think that the biggest thing that I've learned is everyone has constantly said, "Oh, this is impossible. Like these never work. This is never going to work." And time and time again, we've gone and proven one by one wrong. And we still have a long ways to go before it's inevitable, before it's undeniable. I think right now for politics it's undeniable, but it's like, okay, well, how are they going to diversify? And that's on us to prove. I don't expect anyone to hear me speak and be like, okay, they're going to do it. The proof is going to be in the pudding. But I think that there's a mile of difference between impossible and very difficult. And some of the things that make sense but just haven't happened before, if you build a great product and you understand the market you're building for and you figure out how to get right distribution, like anything's possible. I think that like the right mindset to have is like the aggressively optimistic one, because the world's filled with opportunity, and if you gun for it and you are competent and you are savvy about your approach and you lead with product and building something great that solves a problem, like you can bend the world. So, dealt with a lot of like setbacks and difficulties and had to learn a lot about a lot of different topics in order to get here. But I also kind of love that stuff. I mean, within reason. Like I started Polymarket with very little money, and I didn't understand anything about, the idea of people using it and knowing what it was just so cool. I didn't even think that much further ahead in terms of like the business side of things. The vision was crystal clear for me, but the cool thing about what we do is like you have to understand market microstructure, you have to understand media and memes, you have to understand contract writing and journalism and news. And we have a small team of like people who are polymaths, like people who love a ton of different topics and love to learn about things and take a multidisciplinary approach to go and understand, okay, well, we need intuitive product design and we need to meet that with, how continuous double auctions work and like order books and like understanding all these different primitives from different domains and putting it together. So things can be really fucking hard, but if someone is committed enough and has a competent team around them and is willing to go all in for a while, like just because it hasn't happened yet or just because other people failed in the past is by no means a bearing that something is impossible.
So I think I'm being told we may be up on time or close to up on time. I feel like we could talk for a very long time. I'm going to hit you with one more question.
Yes.
So, like Polymarket 2030, like what is your like most radical prediction, your personal prediction about Polymarket in that year that maybe people don't expect or people don't think about, but is in your mind? So,
I mean, when people would always ask me this, I always thought like market price of things, like the Polymarket odds of everything would just be everywhere. You would, you're already, when you're looking at like a finance TV show, you see the ticker price of everything. When you're looking at sports, you see the odds of everything. Like for everything else, whether it's culture, whether it's news or anything, you'll see like Polymarket pricing and probably a graph of how it's trending over time. And on the flip side, the idea of talking, you're like talking out your ass and like bullshitting. Like people are going to go and challenge people to put their money where their mouth is. So there's those fundamental primitives, but if I were to get really futuristic, one of the most exciting things to me about prediction markets is if you can create conditional markets to go and basically forecast the probability of, if you're trying to optimize for a specific vertical. I'll give an example. Like if Trump wins, what will be the like market cap of like what will be the aggregate market cap of all cryptocurrency at the end of 2025? So
if Trump doesn't win, it resolves neutrally?
Yeah, you set it up so that you get back your principal if the condition isn't met. But and then if Kamala wins, and then you could think of it doing the same thing if there were 8 candidates. And the market will go and basically tell you who you should vote for if you want to optimize for the crypto industry. Like that to me, so when people say like, oh, the trading volume, whatever, like there is something, at the fabric of opinion and decision making and truth, like this is the answer. In the fabric of tons of AI and deep fakes and different models that tell you different things, markets are the answer. And like, we're just, as people who built the market leading product and like have won on distribution, like it's our job to keep going, pushing forward. And luckily we have the resources to be really aggressive in going and bringing those things to life. So I hope one day that when people want to make decisions, they search up whatever it's about on Polymarket or they ask a question first and then can make better decisions and be more self-assured in their life.
Shayne, thank you. This is amazing.
Thanks for having me,
Really
guys.
appreciate it.